everyone, and welcome to our Life Skills Workshop. Today, we're going to get into talking about making good decisions and taking control of your life. First of all, I could tell you about my credentials. I could tell you that I went to the University of Wisconsin and University of Kentucky. I could tell you that I went to the Ohio College of Applied Science as well as Northern Kentucky University. I could tell you about my experience as a corporate manager for 35 years, or the producer of an award-winning television show, or the producer of a theatrical show called The Stars of Magic. But none of that matters today, because I'm a pipeline today. I'm the conduit today of the purest information. And that information comes from a book named From the Dad's Corner. The book got started early in 2012 when I wrote to my two daughters, Robin and Katie. I wrote a letter to them and tried to share with them the most important values, the most important concepts, the most important things that I found out in life over nearly 60 years. And not long after that, 59 other fathers from 9 different states and 4 different countries have come together and joined in. And now we have a wonderful book of the purest information. It's 3,500 years of information. And that's a lot of information, because if you spread that out in a chronological timeline, that'll take you back to somewhere around 1,500 BC. Think about that. That's a lot of information. But the good part is that it's information just about the last 60 or 80 years. It's the purest information. And today we live in a world of information. You know, years ago when I wanted to look up something, I would have to go to the libraries or to the bookstores or wherever. The information was there, but it was time consuming to gather it. Now, at the click of a mouse, the touch of a finger, we have all of that information. But we're never quite sure what to believe. We have to wade through so much information. You know, it's nice to know what Ken Brew, Jack Etherton, Clyde Gray would be telling us, but what's really good, where the real information comes from, is what these guys are telling their children. That's the purest information. Dads love to share their information. Life doesn't come with an instruction book. That's why we have dads. In my session here, in my part, I'm making 4 basic assumptions. The first assumption is that life is not perfect. Never was, never will be. If you're striving for perfection, you're setting yourself up for a life of constant frustration. Life is not fair. Never was, never will be. Each one of us have different skills, different talents. Each one of us were born with different opportunities. Each one of us were born in a different social economic background. Our opportunities are all different. Life is not fair, never was, never will be. The third assumption I'm making is that what I'm talking about applies to some big gray mass that we call normal. And it's big. And so how do you define it? Maybe it's easier to define what is not normal. And that might be if you're dealing with addictions, or if you're dealing with abuse of some sort, or if you're dealing with a life-threatening situation, then what I have to say may not be applicable, may not apply. The fourth basic assumption is that I'm making the assumption that as we go through this journey called life, that we all want to be happy, that we're searching for some type of happiness. And I'm here to tell you that most of the fathers and many of the mothers who are now participating in the second book, From the Mom's Corner, have said this: happiness is a choice. And that's what we're going to talk about, making good choices so that we can live a happy life. Another couple ideas that are common in the book is that when I talk to these 59 other fathers, nearly every one of them said the same thing: my kids just don't listen to me. Well, as fathers, we know that some of it sticks. We know that they listen to some of it, but we're never quite sure what they listen to. In fact, some of the best words a father can hear are his own words coming out of his kid's mouth. You know, another thing that they talk about is education. The father stressed the importance of good education. They talk about prayer. Now, when I wrote to my daughters, it was a very secular project. Prayer had nothing to do with it. But it's amazing how so many fathers from across the country and other countries as well pointed out the importance of keeping God in your life and praying on a daily basis. Never saw that one coming, but it happened. Another idea that the fathers talked about was passion. Find out what you're good at and be passionate about it. Enjoy life. Happiness is a decision, and part of that decision is to being passionate about life. Another thing they talk about, and they stress this, it's amazing. It's said in so many different ways. They stressed the importance of keeping good company. Your friends and relatives influence you. Keeping good company. One of the ways I liked the way Ken Klosterman said it to his 3 kids, he said, you know, if you follow a cart of gold, you pick up gold. If you follow a cart of dirt, you pick up dirt. And I think what he was saying by that is the company that you keep, if you keep good company, you're going to pick up good habits. If you keep bad company, well, you know the rest of the story. The last thing that the fathers talked about that I'm going to share with you today is balance. They talked about the importance of balance. And we all know there's 4 aspects of our life in balance. The physical, the intellect, the emotional, and the spiritual. Each one needs to be in balance with itself, and each one needs to be in balance with each other. And when I think of balance, and I think of the 4 aspects that we just talked about, I like to think of the automobile. Now, we all travel. We all have our own automobile in life. Some have a Cadillac, some of us drive a Volkswagen, but nevertheless, there's 4 wheels on our journey in life, our automobile of life. The first, and it's important to keep that in balance. You know, when a tire is, before the tire is even put on an automobile, that tire goes through a very regimented process to make sure that it's in balance. They put little weights on it just to keep it in balance, because if that tire is not in balance, at maybe 25, it starts to shake a little. At 30, it starts to wobble. At 35, now it's really shimmying. At 45, who knows what. It might even pull you off the road of life to a fatality. So no, it's very important to keep our life in balance, just as it is our automobile. You know, and then we talked about the 4 aspects. On the physical, all the experts say the same thing. It all comes down to 4 or 5 basic concepts, and that is to get enough sleep, to get the right amount of sleep. The second thing is to have a good diet. And thank goodness we have Julie House here, who's going to come up here in a few moments and talk to you about her ministry and keeping good nutrition in our diet. The third thing that on the physical tire of life is to keep exercise in our life. The fourth thing is to reduce stress. In the last 20 or 30 years, we found out how much damage stress can do to us. The fifth thing is to keep good blood flow. The second wheel on our car of life, the automobile of life, is the intellect. Remember how I said the fathers told in different ways how important it is to get a good education? It's very good for a number of reasons. One is because by getting the best education you can, it helps me become the best version of ourselves. And isn't that what life is all about? Becoming the best version of ourselves. Getting a good, strong education leads to a diverse and prosperous life. It opens up many doors and opportunities. It allows us to command a higher wage, a higher salary. It's one of the best investments that we can make in our lives. And the fathers point that out. The third wheel on that on that car of life is our emotional wheel. And this one is very important. But unfortunately, often it's neglected. Maybe because it's less visible. Maybe because it's easier to hide our emotions sometimes. But when that wheel gets out of balance, boy, it's hard to keep that car on the road, because our emotions really take control of our car when it's out of balance. So it's very important, if we want to make good decisions, to make sure that our emotional wheel is in balance. You know, and when it's out of balance, don't be afraid to reach out to people, especially what we said about keeping good company. Don't be afraid to reach out to good people, and even professionals. The fourth wheel on the automobile of life is the spiritual wheel. And I'm afraid all too often we keep that spiritual wheel in the trunk of our car like the spare tire, instead of keeping that spiritual wheel on our automobile and keep it inflated to the right pressure, to the right amount of air in it. We need to keep that spiritual wheel in our car so that when we need it, we've got enough strength to pull us through that catastrophic event when it happens. Notice I didn't say if, I said when, because each and every one of us here will face a catastrophic event. And it's nice to be able to pull upon that faith and to get us through that catastrophic events. And you know, my daughter said something to me not too long ago. She came up from Georgia, and I wanted to share this with you. She said, we had a nice conversation going about spirituality, and she said, Dad, if you pray only when you're in trouble, then you already are in trouble. And I thought for a moment, I ran in and wrote it down because I wanted to share that with you today. And I thought, what that means is just what I'm saying. If you keep your spirituality in the trunk of your car as an emergency tire, you're already in trouble, because when that catastrophic event happens, chances are you won't have the spiritual strength to get you through. No, balance comes from good decisions, doing the next right thing. Every day we make thousands of decisions, some good, some bad, some big, some small. Some have significant impact on our lives, some do not. Good decisions allow you to take control of your life. Today, I encourage each one of you and myself to take control of our own lives and decide where it's going. You decide where your life's going to be. You decide if it's going to be successful. And I know, and you know, that success can be defined in many, did I say many? Many different ways. But the process of getting to that success is very common. And it all comes down to 3 steps. The GPA. And I'm not talking about grade point average. I'm talking about goals, plans, and actions. Goals. SMART goals. S-M-A-R-T. SMART goals. S, it needs to be specific. M, it needs to be measurable. A, it needs to be achievable. R, it needs to be realistic. And T, time sensitive. Let me give you an example. Let's just say let's say I'm working hard and I said, you know, I want to take a break. I'm going to go on vacation when I get an opportunity. I'm going to go out west. Well, that's sort of a goal, but it's not a SMART goal. It's not specific, it's not measurable, it's not achievable. Well, maybe it's achievable, but we don't know. It's maybe not realistic, and we don't know. It's certainly not time sensitive. But let's take that goal and turn it into a SMART goal. Let's say at the end, and here's the way I'll do it. At the end of next week, on Wednesday of next week, I'm going to drive to Cleveland at 5 o'clock. Now, Ron here in the front row is saying, Cleveland? I don't know if that's a SMART goal, but nevertheless, it does have all of the same characteristics. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, is it realistic, and is it time sensitive? Yes, by that time that I just said, we'll know whether I'm going to make it there or not. And whether I make it there or not depends on whether I do the second part of the process, and that is develop a plan. And make a map from here to Cleveland. Now, years ago, I used to pull out the old AAA, and put the yellow line down and figure it all out. Now we just key in the GPS, but it doesn't matter whether our plan is on paper or on computer. We still need a SMART plan. The third step is to take action. You know, if we never get in a car and stick the key in and never turn it on, we are never going to get to Cleveland. And I'm afraid this is the third step. The third step is where many of us stop. We often dream and set goals in our minds. We often plan, but to actually take action, that takes courage, because it takes us to get out of our comfort zone. It makes us step into an area that, wow, I'm now at risk. I may fail. And we're so afraid, we're so intimidated to failure that we often stop at the third step. So today, if you leave with one thing, I want you to remember today to take that step, to reach out and make your life a little bit better today. You know, so how can we ever hope to make the right decision? Well, first of all, we need to set priorities. We need to understand our values. It's important to know the 3, 4, maybe 5 most important things in our lives. And the reason I say that is because if you want to make smart decisions, you never want to let a lower priority item jeopardize you from reaching a higher priority item. So in order to be focused, you have to know what the most important things are in your life. Have you ever heard of the 6-word project? You might have seen it on the internet. You might have seen it on TV where they hold up a sign and it has 6 words on it. And it usually relates to something very significant. I think that started with Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway was challenged. He was challenged to write a story in 6 words, and he won the bet. He wrote For sale. Baby shoes. Never worn. Kind of a sad story, but it's amazing. In 6 stories, you now have a whole picture in your mind. You know, when and I guess where I'm going with this is you need to think maybe of the 6 most important words that would describe your life. And are you, and when I say you, I mean us, are we living our lives in a way that's consistent with those 6 words? And would our friends or relatives describe our life with those same 6 words? When I walk through the cemetery, I try to do my exercise, the physical part, and I walk at the top of my street, there's a cemetery. I often walk through there and I look, and every once in a while I see a headstone with more than just the name and date on it. And I think to myself often, wouldn't it be great if each headstone had 6 words on it so that I would know something about each person, about their lives? Well, back in 1997 when I lost my dad, I took the opportunity to buy the 2 plots at the foot of my parents' place where they're going to be buried. Well, where my dad is buried, where my mom eventually will be buried. And I noticed that 2 plots over, somebody wrote, one of the people wrote, a good golfer. 3 words, but at least I know here's somebody that loved to play golf. And probably that's what his life was all about. He loved to play golf. At that time, back in 1997, I spelled out what 3 words would be on my headstone. And the 3 words I put in 1997 is, I told him, I said, my name's not important, date's not important, but the most important thing to me are 3 words. A good father. That's what I'm about. And I thought to myself, now I was talking about 6 words. If I were to say, what 6 words would I pick instead of those 3? Secondary to those 3, I would say, just do the next right thing. Another way to make good decisions is to listen to your instincts, but don't let them boss you around. There's a right time to listen to your instincts, and there's not. You know, for example, when we're driving our automobile down the street, here we are back to that car, when we're driving our automobile down the street, it's important to let our instincts take over for the most part, because it's already making hundreds, maybe thousands of decisions to keep you on the right path. A lot of times those decisions have already been made 10 seconds before we even are aware that they've been made. That's a right time to let your automatic pilot take over. But if you're making an important decision, you don't want to sacrifice that important decision by just very quickly letting your automatic pilot make that decision for you. So timing is very important. And if it's an important decision, don't be afraid to list them. Take the time to list them out. You know, if you're buying a house or if you're buying an automobile, if you're making an important decision, people sometimes don't do this. It's very common, but take time to write it down. Make a column for the things why to do it, the pros. Make a reason why not to make that down. So you make 2 lists, why to do it and why not to do it. And I was talking about timing. Well, if you can buy yourself some time to research whatever you're looking at, whatever the decision is. Read. We're around thousands of books, the internet. There's so much information around us. Talk and discuss it with professionals. Talk and discuss it with the good friends that you're keeping it, people that you could trust. And sometimes, you know, if you've done all of this and you're looking at it a certain way and it just doesn't make sense, don't be afraid to take a different position and look at it a different way. Rephrase the question. And don't be afraid to look at history. Don't be afraid to look at history. Have I been in this decision before? And how do I handle it? And has somebody else been in this position before? And how did they handle it? One of the things that one of the fathers, and I can't remember which one said, I really liked, he said, and I've heard it before, but he said it in a book, if you learn from your mistakes, you're smart. If you learn from somebody else's mistakes, you're a genius. So life is too short to learn from just our own mistakes. We need to be learning from one another. Another way to make good decisions is to remember that time is on our side. Put a little distance between us and the time that you have to make the decision. You know, if it's time to make it, you make the decision. Another thing that we can do, remember that spiritual tire that I was talking about? Don't be afraid to pray about it. Don't be afraid to pray about the decision that's on your table that you have to make. Pray daily, pray often, and ask for the guidance that you need. And don't be afraid to be thankful for that guidance that you receive. But sooner or later, you have to make the decision. You can't procrastinate about it. You know, the question, first of all, you have to decide, am I choosing what career that I'm going to go down, or am I trying to figure out what I'm going to have for breakfast? Not all the decisions are equal. Some are more important than others. So you don't need to follow every step that I talked about for every decision. But once you make the decision, make it in concrete, make it final. Don't change it unless there's a good reason about it. Don't keep reanalyzing it. You have to stop sometime. The decision has been made, and now it's time to move on to the next decision. So remember, keep your automobile of life in balance. Remember the GPA, not grade point average, but smart goals, plans, and action. And make good choices, make good decisions. Just do the next right thing. Make that commitment to yourself today to take that action, to do whatever it is you need to move you one step closer to wherever you are heading, to wherever your goals are. And it will take you to the next level. And now, as we wrap this up, I'd like to just leave one final thought, and that is, if your ride in life isn't quite in balance today, then now is the time to do something different. If you continue to do the same thing over and over again, if you drop a ball and it comes back, you drop the ball, it'll come back to you from now till the next 10 years. So unless you do something different, you're going to get the same results. So today, I'm going to give yourself permission to change your life. Give yourself permission to improve your life. Every time you see an automobile, I want you to remember the balance that we talked about. The 4 wheels on the automobile, the balance in the automobile of life. Every time you see a headstone, I want you to think about those 6 words. What 6 words are you going to put on your headstone? And would your friends, your relatives, put those same 6 words? Every time you hear the words GPA, I know you're going to think of not the grade point average, but goals, smart goals, planning, and action. And every time you see a book, I want you to remember today to live your life with power and purpose, to make good decisions. Just like the fathers are saying in the book, do the next right thing. And if you embrace one thing today, embrace at least this one truth. And that is, you were born to become the best version of yourself. That is the most important thing. That is the most important truth you can walk away with today. Thank you. God bless.